Hey everyone, welcome to our second professional development series. Let's talk about student loans. We're truly excited. Again, we have Ms. Jasmine Payne who will be speaking about student loans. And she will give you a disclosure that this is not something she is actually licensed in, but because of her experience and the individuals that she's worked with in the past to help, that she has helped, has brought her to this point to make sure she can help us and the individuals in our communities and those who just need help with student loans. So I'm truly excited. Again, stay on the call throughout the time because guess what? We're giving a free giveaway. So a little Walmart card, $40. So make sure you stay on, participate, and here we go. Turning it over to Ms. Payne.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Davis. So this is part 2 of our student loans after graduation. We did part 1 2 weeks from yesterday. We did that part 1. So now we're going to wrap it up with the remainder information I have for you all. This will be the final part on this topic of discussion for the More for More Professional Development Series, but make sure you look out on the social media outlets to see what we'll be discussing for the month of August. So let's just go ahead and get started. So we're going to start with a recap. It's an interactive recap. So I'm going to ask a question. Anybody that's not more for more, please provide an answer for me. I strongly encourage it. And all the questions are public knowledge that you can find very easily, that's available to you online and the different studentaid.gov website, and just overall, if you can Google just about any of these answers. And if you were a part of the call a couple weeks ago, it's basically everything that we discussed. So let's go ahead and get the first question. So non-More for More members, what are 2 categories of loans for student borrowers? So our focal a couple weeks ago was these 2 categories. One is a financial aid base, the other is a credit base. And any idea from anybody that's not a More for More person what those 2 categories may be?
Is it unsubsidized and subsidized?
Oh, actually, the unsubsidized and subsidized loans fall into the financial aid category of this one. So one starts with a P, and the other one starts with a G, and they're type of loans that those direct loans fall under.
Pell Grant, no. Okay.
Okay, so anyone that was on the call a couple weeks ago, we talked about private loans and government loans. Those unsubsidized loans and direct loans that the individual just talked about tends to fall underneath those government loans. Our next question would be, how long is the grace period once a student loan goes into repayment status?
Isn't it 6 months after you graduate?
That is correct. Normally it's about 6 months. Thank you. Next question, what is the difference between a subsidized and an unsubsidized loan?
I'm not really for sure like which one, but doesn't like one start interest like when you get the loan, and then the other one doesn't accrue interest till after you graduate?
Yeah, so a tip that we had a couple weeks ago was that U is what unsubsidized starts with. She is correct, by the way, for each one of those, the description she gave. But the tip that I gave a couple weeks ago was that the unsubsidized loan starts with you. So you are responsible for the interest on that loan from the date of disbursement to the loan has reached its life. So the one that's unsubsidized starts incurring interest from the moment that you receive the loan. The subsidized loans, your interest will not begin until it's in a repayment status. And also those subsidized loans will not incur interest whenever you're in things such as deferment or forbearance. Thank you for your answer. Next question, what are some options available for borrowers unable to meet the payment requirements? Hint, I just mentioned 2 of them just a moment ago. Like just the last question, I just said 2 of them.
Can't you do like a payment plan, like
that is definitely an option. And then we just said 2 more of them when your subsidized loan isn't incurring interest during these 2 options.
Can you get a what's the word, deferment, or like what I have where I don't have a payment plan, but it's something else where they can like pause it or freeze it. I just don't know the name of it. Like I don't know the word for it. But
So deferment is correct. That is
okay.
correct. You actually said it. So who gave the first response?
Zaria did.
Okay, and then Jacita gave the second response. So you guys, in case you didn't know this, this was our gift card question. So the individuals that participated in this response is a gift card winner. What we're going to do, since both of you all were a part of this response, is that we're going to have to send you all both a gift card now. Ms. Davis responded at the beginning of the call that we were doing a $40 gift card to Walmart for the individual that may have earned it. In this case, you all happen to both respond on this question. So you both earned the gift card. Miss Zaria and Miss Cedar, if you all will drop your emails in the chat box, someone from More, probably Miss Davis, will reach out to you for your mailing details, and they'll get that gift card to you. Thank you all so much for your support and participating in this.
Congratulations, ladies.
Congratulations, ladies. We'll get those gift cards to you. Just make sure you give us your email so that we can send them out hopefully early this week. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into what we're here for today. So discussing income-driven repayment plans. For the rest of this discussion, I will refer to these as IDRs, just because I like to keep saying. So there's 4 main IDRs that are available to individuals that decide to take on a repayment plan. The main reason you want to consider an IDR is because your current monthly payment exceeds your available monthly income. When I say monthly available income, I'm referring to anything you have available after you've paid all your expenses and your personal necessities. So once you've sat down and you paid all your monthly bills, your rent, your utilities, went and purchased food for your home, gas, all of those things have been taken care of. Whatever you have left at that point would be what you would consider for making payments into your student loans and deciding if you should sign up for one of these repayment plans. Once you have been approved for a repayment plan, then of course you want to add that monthly payment into your expenses for the month. So the 4 IDRs that we're going to, sorry guys, went the wrong way. The 4 IDRs we're going to focus on is pay as you earn, revised pay as you earn, income-based, and income contingent. All of these can be found on the studentaid.gov website. A lot of details available for you. And anything you may need to know about each one of these plans, we're going to go into a little more detail as we keep forward, but anything you may need to know and you just need to visually see it, I strongly encourage you to go to the studentaid.gov website. All 4 of these payments, they kind of overlap with what the requirements are and what to expect from them, but each one has their own individual thing that sets them apart from the next. However, when determining how much your monthly payment would be every month, they rely on the discretionary income. And that's basically your adjusted gross income, which you could find that on your tax returns for each year, less your federal poverty line for your family size in whatever state you may be in. And the state is of big importance when you're filling out this information, because even though you may be a head of household with 2 dependents making $40,000 or $45,000 a year, if you're in Missouri versus Illinois, your payments will differ. Illinois tend to have a higher payment than Missouri, and that's just because where the poverty line is for that particular state. So make sure you're being specific when you're filling out that information. One other thing I want to show you all before we move on is this student aid government website, just so you can know, kind of have an idea on what you're looking at when you go on there. So waiting for it to load, guys. So when you get on this website, you'll see these 2 boxes here. The first one is the repayment strategy. You will use this to go in and kind of get an idea on which payment plan is the best for you. If you're honest with what you put in on that financial questions, there's quite a few different questions they ask you. It's not time consuming at all. I literally did an example for you all we're going to look at in just a moment. And it took me about 5 minutes to input the information. If you know your information, obviously be honest. And it'll tell you which repayment plan you fall into based off of the information you provided. In the case that you're not sure if you're ready for a repayment plan or if you should take the road of deferment, then you would use this second box where it says struggling with my payments. If you go into this, they kind of assess what you tell them based off the questions they provide you, and they let you know kind of where you stand, if you should consider deferring until you're in a better situation or consider one of the repayment plans. So just to show you all kind of an idea of what the actual repayment looks like if you were to go in and do it. So I did one here for you all. These are the stats that I put in. The person's income was about $40,000 in the state of Missouri, head of household, and had 2 dependents. Based off of that information, and there's some other questions, it's very user friendly, but there's some other questions that kind of assess to this. But based off that information, they stated that the monthly payment would be about $62 for the next 10 years a month. The reason why it's 10 years is because I said that you want to apply for the public service loan forgiveness. We're going to talk about that in detail, but that's a 10-year plan. So over the course of that 10 years, every month, given that your current status here doesn't change, your payments would be about $62. Those 10 years, you'll pay down $7,333. The amount of the loan that I put in was $33,000, with $22,000 being unsubsidized and $10,000 being unsubsidized. So the amount that would be remaining after that 10-year period would be $37,000. If you notice, the amount was originally $33,000. It increased because the interest that was being incurred on that loan. And we're going to get into detail on why that was so significant there. However, it also gives you a visual. I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, but you go ahead and finish your statement. I do have a question though.
Okay. So also something else that I thought was very significant to this, because when I first applied for my student repayment option, it was not this visually pleasing. It was literally answering and checking boxes to make sure that it covered everything I needed, but it actually provides you a visual to show where your loan payments look like as it goes throughout the years if nothing changes to your financial situation or your family size. And in doing so, it shows you kind of where your loans go. Now, if you were on one of the other repayment plans, because on this one it's stating that you should be, they're recommending the revised pay-as-you-earn repayment. Had it been one of the other plans, it may have been different steps in this graph here showing how your loan amounts may have fluctuated. It also shows you some advantages and disadvantages for choosing to use the recommended repayment option. And one other thing I thought was really nice, because I'm one of these people that need to see all my options, they actually show you all your options. So these first 4 here are just standard payment options. They're all about 10 years, 10 to 20 years, and you'll make payments based off of this. But the other 4 that we're going to talk about today here, the income based, the revised pay as you earn, the income contingent, and the pay as you earn, they show you what your payments would have been for each one of them. The reason why they chose the revised pay as you earn is the one that's most sufficient for you is because, one, this individual was looking for the lowest payment. And the lowest payment and the most beneficial loan forgiveness amount was this revised. If you look at the income base, the forgiveness amount is $41,000. And yeah, they're paying off, they're forgiving more, and it's $41,000 here as well. The income contingent tends to be a little more on the monthly payment just because how it's calculated, which we'll talk about. But the reason why this one was the revised pay as you earn was most beneficial is because that forgiveness amount is basically a gift from the government that you will have to be taxed on the year that it's forgiven. And we'll talk about that in more detail too. I just touched on it because I wanted you all to see the significance on that. So that's why I felt it was important for you all to kind of see this stimulator, to see that if you're not exactly sure which direction you want to go in, there are some resources already available for you on the internet that can just help you navigate your decision. So that question, you want to go ahead and ask it while I bring back up the screen?
Yes. So I have 2 sets of loans. I have my undergrad loans, and then I also have my graduate loans now. Are they, can I put that together? Like, does the student government website put those together so that when I'm done with school, I have 6 months to pay off those loans, or to start to pay for those loans? Or with my undergrad loans, will they like automatically like kind of start that back up regardless? Because as of right now, my undergrad loans are obviously like in deferment because I'm in school. But do they still have a 6-month period also once I'm done with school? Like, will they put all of that together, basically?
That's a good question. We're actually going to be the follow-on question for this next one here. So the type of loans that are eligible on income-driven repayment. So if you're already, so first, is your undergrad already in the income-driven repayment plan?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's actually perfect. So your undergraduate loans will fall into all three of these categories here, basically. Your graduate loans and your professional loans will also fall into all three of these categories, with the exception of the Parent Plus loans. So if you look here, you can see that the direct subsidized and unsubsidized, as well as those plus loans for graduates and professionals, fall into all three of our categories. So the revised pay-as-you-earn, income-based repayment, and the contingent repayment. When you get down to the direct consolidation here, you can see there's no Parent Plus loan allowed in these two categories. The IBR one has it a little bit additional ones, and I'm going to talk on each one of those in just a second. I just want to address your question a little further. So since you're in school right now and your loans are in deferment due to schooling, when you come out of school, you will have that 6 months grace period for both those undergraduate loans and the graduate loans, because it restarts up for those undergraduate loans that was originally already set up. They still give you that 6 months to try to establish income so that you can make your payments. However, if you want your graduate loans to be a part of whichever the IDRs that you're a part of, you would have to go in and contact your loan provider and let them know that you have graduate loans that you believe are able to be included in whichever plan that you're a part of. If you're in the income base, then all of these loans are available to you. Your graduate loans will come in as Direct Plus, or they may come in as FFEL. I'll tell you what that is in a second. But if there are any of these type of loans for your graduate degree, then they're allowed to be added in. Now, there may be two processes they require you to take. One, they may just allow you to add all those loans in to the whatever program you're already on, or they might recommend you to do a consolidation, which will take all your loans and basically sum them into one. They still keep it separated out so you can see which loans each one is for your loan provider, but it'll just have this one lump sum, so you only have one payment that you'll be making. And then you'll take that consolidated loan and have it transferred into whichever IDR you may be a part of at that time. Is that what you were looking for is that what you were trying to figure out?
Yes, that's exactly it.
So those are your options when you're going from undergrad to graduate and you're in deferment state. So now just to touch a little bit more on this IBR plan, the income-based repayment plan, it includes more loans that are available to be included into the repayment plan. The Stanford loans are direct loans, so they have the same type of loan expectations as the direct loans, and they're still handled by the Department of Education. Now, these FFEL loans are federal family education loans. They have similar requirements as a direct loan, but they differ because they are not handled by the Department of Education, so they're not funded through the U.S. Treasury or the government. These loans are going to be funded and held by banks and financial institutions. So that's how those FFEL loans differ from your direct loans. They have similar requirements, but they're managed and funded by different areas. One government, one more into the private financial institutions. Okay, the first repayment plan we're going to talk about is revised pay-as-you-earn. Now, I do want to mention the revised pay-as-you-earn repayments are similar to the pay-as-you-earn repayment. There's just a couple things that distinguish the difference in those. So one thing is that, well, let's just start off by talking about just this one. I'll talk about the difference on the next one. So for the revised pay-as-you-earn, your discretionary income to determine your monthly payment would be 10% of that income. And then the repayment plan lasts anywhere from 20 to 25 years. So the 20 years life of the loan will be geared more to the undergraduate, and then the 25 years will be for the graduate and professional studies if you happen to be on this repayment plan. You would have to recertify. A lot of borrowers are eligible on the federal student loans and can apply for this repayment plan. The reason why I say a lot of borrowers is just because it's open to the undergraduate and the graduates versus, which we'll talk about on the next one only allows you the undergraduate stage in most cases. The payments are, your payments or your monthly payments will be determined on an annual basis. So you will have to recertify every year on this payment plan, on all of the repayment plans that we're discussing today. All of them you have to recertify. So you're going to complete a form to provide your current financial status and your family size and whatever state you may be in, because real life has situations and things change from year to year. It may increase, it may decrease, but you want to make sure that you're only being responsible for taking care of what you can take care of at that time. And by doing your recertification every year, that's what you're basically doing. If you fail to recertify on the revised pay as you earn, then you will be removed from the repayment plan and you'll be placed into that 10-year cookie cutter fits all repayment plan. And that repayment plan is going to most likely be more because it's not income focused. It is determined based on how much your principal is compared to your interest that has incurred and will incur, and however much you would have to pay every month for the next 10 years to get that loan completely paid off. There is no loan forgiveness on the standard payment either. Also, if you fail to recertify, then the payments will no longer be based on income. Like I just mentioned, it'll go to that standard 10-year mark. And the unpaid interest, though, will capitalize. So you will now have a new principal balance. Your new principal balance becomes whatever you originally borrowed plus this capitalized interest that's added onto your principal amount. And then while underneath that 10-year standard payment plan, you'll be making payments on the new principal amount with this new interest being incurred, whatever that may be under your standard plan.
So I have a question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so they're going to, I'm basically getting taxed. I'm using the wrong word, but I'm basically getting charged 3 times.
That's what it
I'm
sounds like, yeah.
Yeah, interest, the previous interest that accumulated from before, and then the new interest that's going to accumulate, and then my principal.
That's correct. Now, that capitalized amount will only be any interest that's still present on the loan at the point that you don't recertify. So that's why we encourage recertification.
So if a individual makes the mistake, can they ever go back on the income base?
So it doesn't disqualify you from ever being able to do that particular repayment plan. What it does, it puts you temporarily back into that standard repayment option. And basically, it depends on what your loan provider allows. The government doesn't say, no, you can't do it anymore. The loan provider may require you to be on that standard repayment plan for a year to show good faith that you're willing to maintain. And then you can go back into one of these repayment options. However, when you go back on any of these IDRs, you're starting over from the beginning. So it's in your best interest to recertify every year. I will say this, for me, I have my own personal calendar where I track it, but my loan provider is very good at sending me an email a month before and 2 months before in the month of, as well as my loan provider's website. I have an inbox on there where it tells me that, hey, it's time for you to recertify. It's coming up to that date. And it even tells me how much I would have to be paying. And let me tell you, that amount that they say that I would have to pay if I do not recertify is enough to remind me to recertify every single year to avoid having to pay that amount. It's a very scary amount that I am trying to avoid. So I know I will never forget this recertification. Matter of fact, when I get that 2-month notice, that's when I complete it. I don't wait until the actual due date. But your annual recertification date will always be the same from whenever you originally got approved for it for that particular loan provider. So
also, if I can add, so before I came into graduate school, I was part of a plan where I didn't have to pay anything because of my income and my 2 kids. Oh, okay.
We're going to talk about that. I want it to be a surprise.
I also had to recertify with that too, even though I wasn't paying anything. But I still had to recertify every year. But okay, go ahead.
That is very true. And she mentioned something that I'm going to touch on in just a moment because it is true. There are options. It's actually our next slide. There are options where, depending on your financial situation, you might not have to pay a dime and your student loans will still be in good standings. Thank you for mentioning that, Ms. Jacita. So this one now is the pay as you earn repayment plan. And this one here also is based on 10% of your discretionary. It does overlap with the revised pay as you earn repayment, but how it differs is that the repayment plan each year is about 20 years. And this 20-year repayment plan is only offered to new borrowers. So in order for you to qualify as a new borrower, that means that you have no outstanding loan balances. So that means most likely you haven't been an undergraduate yet. So you don't qualify, you don't have any outstanding balances on a direct loan or a FFEL loan for any programs that may have been on or after October 1st of 2007 or either October 1st of 2011. So if you fall into those particular statuses where it's either October 1st, one of those October 1st dates, or you have no outstanding, and you have no outstanding loans, then you will qualify for this pay as you earn. It's a 20-year mark. It's only for the new borrowers, and it still calculates your monthly payments based off of your 10% discretionary income. I added this note on this tab about it never exceeding the 10-year standard repayment plan payment, because it's for the revised pay as you earn as well as the pay as you earn, no matter how much income you make. And it's also for the next slide, the income-based repayment plan. No matter how much income you make, whether you're making $40,000 or $200,000 annually, your monthly payments will never exceed whatever the calculated monthly payments would have been on that 10-year standard repayment plan. The repayment plan on the 10-year one is just based on whatever you would have to pay every month in order to pay down that entire principal amount and entire interest amount within 10 years. So your payments will never be more than that, no matter how much money you make. They will fluctuate and increase depending on if you're making more money or less money, but it doesn't matter how much you ever make. It will never exceed whatever that 10-year standard repayment plan payment would have been. Something else about the pay as you earn is that these payments are still determined annually, and the failure to complete this one though, if you do not complete your recertification, your payments will still increase into that 10-year standard plan. However, the unpaid interest will still capitalize. However, the loan amount of years that you have to pay would depend on where you fall at, where you fail to recertify, what year it may be on the loan year count. So this particular loan requires you a 20-year repayment plan. In the case that you failed to recertify in 2000 and, not 2000, let's just do a year mark. So say you've been on this loan payment for 13 years and you were only required to do 20 years total. Well, if you fail to recertify, you will still go back into that 10-year standard repayment that you have to make that payment, whatever it may be, each month. But the amount of time you have to pay on your loan would depend on what year you fall on. If you're 13 years in, you had 7 years left to go on the repayment plan for that 20-year mark, instead of you having to start over at 10 years, you would just have to finish out paying on this standard plan for the next 7 years. And whatever's left over at that point, they'll forgive. So you'll pay whatever that new non-income based payment is for the next 7 years versus having to start over at 10 years. And so that's kind of where this one is more helpful than the revised pay as you earn, because you're not put back at square one of having to pay off your loans for the next 10 years. You only have to pay for the remaining 7 years, whichever is less. In this case, it happens to be that remaining 7 years of that 20-year payment, and you'll pay the standard amount, whatever it may have been, for those next 7 years, and whatever's left over at that point, they'll forgive, and you'll pay that tax credit on. So the fact that this one is only for new borrowers, and the fact that you do not have to start over from square one if you fail to recertify, you just have to increase your payments and keep going forward if it happens to be less than 10 years. If you're only at year 3 and you fail on that 20-year repayment plan, then you would just start over at 10 years and make that monthly payment. So those are the two differences between the revised and the pay as you earn revised. So the next one is the income-based repayment plan, and this is what Ms. Jacita just mentioned earlier. So this particular plan allows you to do everything based on your monthly income and whatever your family size may be. It still considers the discretionary income ranges, which is between 10% and 15%. The 10% you will receive if you are a new borrower, same rules apply, a new borrower after July 1st of 2014. Anything before July 1st of 2014 would have different standards, which they're still at 10% because I came in before 2014. So my discretionary income was set at just a even 10%. If you came in after July 1st of 2014, it could either be 10% for the new borrowers and 15% for prior loan borrowers. The payments still do not exceed the standard payment amount. And the income-based repayment plan is actually eligible for the loan forgiveness through Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. So you can get on that Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program on any of these IDRs, but they recommend the income-based repayment plan because it accepts more student loans than the other 2-3 options does. This one clicks on, as you notice on that other tab where we have the tables at, this income-based repayment plan offers loans through direct and subsidized and unsubsidized loans, the Stratford loans as well, the Stanford loans, as well as the FFEL loans. Those other 3 repayment plans do not offer anything but the direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans and the consolidated loans. So in order to make sure that you're giving the best bang for whatever buck you end up having to pay, and you're in this Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, you definitely want to consider the income-based repayment plan because it captures more loans, so more loans will be forgiven in the long run. Also, this income-based repayment plan is available to graduates and undergraduates. The disadvantage, the ones we just mentioned were advantages. Those disadvantages are the taxes paid on a forgiven loan amount. Now, I did say that that is the rule across all of these IDRs, but we included on this one because income-based repayment plan would be the main plan where you would have the most interest accumulated over the life of a loan and the most tax that you would most likely have to pay on the forgiven loan amount. This is just because they are taking whatever you owe at that point in time when you become qualified for the public service loan forgiveness because they recommend this one. Now, the public service loan forgiveness program is 10 years. The income-based repayment plan is 20 years if you're not on that public service loan forgiveness program. If you are on that loan forgiveness program, then that 10 years is being basically smashed into what your payments will be, and all your interest is being smashed into this 10 years. So all this interest that you're accumulating for just the 10 years versus the 20 years is just being packed onto your principal. And in many cases, this income-based repayment plan is a lot less than your other repayment options. Ms. Jacita just mentioned that she is in a zero repay every month when she is not in deferment, and that is very true. This income-based repayment, depending on your financial situation, could be $0 or it could be $20 a month. And if you have a $30,000 loan coming when you're in repayment status and you're only paying $0 or $20, you're only paying $20 towards your interest every month. So you're not even in a repayment status that has enough to cover what your interest would be. So that's why you're accumulating more interest. The reason why your tax bill is more because that 20 years that you had to pay down some of that interest is smushed down into 10 years. And that 10-year mark now is having all that interest pulled in, accumulating interest on top of that amount. And then you have whatever's left if you've only paid $0 or $20 for the past 10 years or those 120 qualifying payments. So you have a larger amount that you would have to end up paying when it comes to your taxes for the year that is forgiven. So if you fail to complete the annual recertification on your income-based repayment plan, just focusing on the income-based repayment plan, then again, you are placed on the standard plan and your unpaid interest is capitalized. However, in this case, you are starting back over at year 1 if you are just on the income-based repayment plan that is 20 years if you're not considering the public service loan forgiveness. The last one is the income contingent repayment. So this one, the payments are determined by discretionary income or the combination of your loan debt and your income, whichever is less. Now they take 20% of your discretionary income and 20% of your loan debt and income combined, and whichever is less of those two will be your monthly payments each month. The repayment life for this is about 25 years, and the payments are greater than the IDR plans, those other three that we discussed, but less than the standard repayment plan. So I like to call this one the bridge plan. It's the bridge between the two. You're either going to pay more or you're going to pay a little less, or you can just fall in the middle and just hang on the bridge. And also something else about this one is that the failure to complete the annual recertification will result in a payment increase that brings you back to that 10-year standard plan, but it follows the rules of the pay-as-you-earn repayment plan. So in the case that you do fail to recertify, it'll still take all your interest and pack it back into your principal amount. Your new principal amount will have the interest applied, and then they'll determine what your payments are for the next 10 years. Each month, what it would be to cover whatever new interest you may have, plus the interest already incurred. And you would start over at whatever is less. So if you're at 20 years and you had 5 years to go, then you would only have to pay for the next 5 years, whatever that standard payment amount was. If you're only 2 years in, then you'll just do the 10 years for whatever the standard repayment plan would be. And kind of a summary of what we just talked about, just to make it easier to see, because I did say a lot for each one of those different repayment options. So this is the summary here. I do want to point out this first one, the pay-as-you-earn, is similar to your revised pay-as-you-earn, but remember, the qualifying years may differ. It may be 20 to 25 years, depending if you're a new borrower or a prior loan carrier. And also that the revised pay-as-you-earn is for graduates and undergraduates. Okay, public service loan forgiveness program. So this program is offered for anyone that is federal, state, local government, or that is a part of a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, or a not-for-profit organization that does not have a 501c3 organization, or also a AmeriCorps or Peace Corps. So I do want to make a mental note for you. If you are a part of a nonprofit that falls into either of those categories, you would want to confirm with your loan provider and also your nonprofit if they are one of these qualified public service loan forgiveness employers. Just because you're a nonprofit does not mean you automatically qualify for this program. So I would very, very much be sure to verify this with both your employer and the loan provider, and even the studentaid.gov website. They actually have a new tool now where you can put in your employer's FEIN number, and they'll let you know if they are one of those qualifying employers. The public service loan forgiveness program allows you to include your federal direct loans as well as any federal consolidation loans. We kind of touched on this, that all the loans that's included in the income-based repayment plan are loans that qualify for this public service loan forgiveness program. So basically all of those different loans, with the exception to the Parent Plus loan, is allowed inside of the public service forgiveness program. The repayment of this loan is recommended under the IBR plan, and you would have to make 120 qualifying payments. So 120 qualifying payments will basically calculate to one payment a month. So that's 12 payments a year for the next 10 years. That gives you 120 qualifying payments. But when we say qualifying payments, it goes a step further, because in order for the payments to be considered qualifying, it has to actually be in repayment status. So while that may calculate to 10 years, you may end up really being on this public service loan forgiveness program for 11 years or 12 years, because a qualifying payment means that you've actually either made a payment and your loan has been in good standing and you are on time and meeting the requirements. Now, if you have a $0 a month payment, your loan is still in good standing, so you're okay. You're considered to have a qualifying payment. But say your payment is $20 and you were late this month, that's not considered a qualifying payment because you did not meet the requirements of the loan. One of the requirements is that you do have to pay these loans within the time frame that you're required to pay it. Your loan provider will give you a date. You have to make sure you get the loan in during that time frame, because otherwise it's a late payment, and late payments are not qualifying payments. Also, whenever your public service loan forgiveness program has a deferment or forbearance option, then you will not have a qualifying payment unless you make that payment. If you're in deferment and you're not making payments, that's not a qualifying payment. If you're in forbearance, it's not a qualifying payment. Right now, we have the COVID-19 that's going on, and we have the stimulus bill that's supporting the student loans right now. And if you're not actively making these payments during this 6 to 7 months, that's 6 or 7 months with no qualifying payments. So these payments are not being considered as part of your 120 qualifying payments. So when they say 10 years, just take it with a grain of salt, because your 10 years may very quickly turn into 11 or 12 because they go by the number of payments you have. With the public service loan forgiveness requirements, you have to recertify annually, since payments are through the income-driven repayment plan. So if you're on this program, you have 2 steps. You'll do your annual recertification with whatever IDR you're on. Then you'll also complete a form, complete a form that requires you to have your current employer, your qualifying employer, to complete this form here. They'll have someone within the organization to sign off on it that basically says that yes, you are an employee from one of these qualifying employers, and then you'll submit this to the government. You'll submit this to your loan provider, whoever that may be. Now, the recertification for your public service loan forgiveness, you do not get a reminder about that. That is your responsibility to do. You don't have to do it annually. You can do it every year and a half. You can do it every 2 years. I recommend annually because it keeps up with both your requirements for your IDR, and then also it'll keep you on track for whatever your annual payments are. Now, I will admit I did not fill out mine until year 3 of being on the program, but every year since then, I have done it annually because they count your qualifying payments. And if you do it on an annual basis, then you can track your payments along with them, because there are humans that are inputting this information and they do make errors. I personally had an error when I was transitioning jobs, which were still falling under these particular job requirements. So federal, state to federal, they made the error of not giving me what I thought was 3 months. Really, it should have only been 2 months, but there was 3 months where I thought that they were missing out on my qualifying payments. I made them on time. I met the requirements of the loan. I wasn't in deferment. Why didn't I get these additional 3 months? I found out that one, they made an error on 2 of the months, and the 1 month did not qualify for me because that 1 month that I made that payment, I wasn't really employed with the new employer yet. So they did not count that payment. I started after the date from when I left my last job into the new one. I made the payment, but I was not at that new job until the 20th of the month or the 16th of the month. So they couldn't count that payment because I wasn't technically an employee for either one of the state or the government at that time, the state or the federal at that time. So, and then they correct my question. They made a correction to, basically you have this little scale that tell you like how many payments when you recertify, and they made the correction to add in those additional 2 months. So you are the person that has to be watchful of your student loan. So by doing this annually, it just makes it easier to catch errors, because errors do happen. And then now we're gonna do things. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay, I have 2 questions. My first question is, you said that this particular repayment plan or this program is set up based off of how many qualified payments you make. So what if I made 2 in 1 month? Does that like get deducted? And then my second question is, if I miss a payment on this program, do I have to start all over like I would with the other programs, with the repayment plan programs to the government?
Okay, so the second part, which you just asked about, what would happen if you missed a payment? So remember, the public service loan forgiveness is a program for your employer. So you're underneath the IDR plans. You're on one of those IDR plans. It doesn't matter which one. They recommend the income-based repayment, but no matter which one you're on, if you're on the revised pay-as-you-earn, your failure to miss the payment falls into the same status, where If you do not make the payment, then basically you're not following the requirements of this particular repayment plan. So then you won't have either where you have to communicate with your loan provider and ask them if you can reschedule for a new month of payment and see if it'll still keep you in qualifying status. And if that's not the case, then you risk the option of going into losing the repayment plan that you're on and being placed on that standard 10-year plan. So it follows the same rule of whatever IDR you're on. The public service loan forgiveness is not the actual repayment plan you're on. It's just the forgiveness program you're in. So those repayment plans last 20 to 25 years. Your forgiveness program is basically the government giving you an out because you chose to take a lower income by working for these type of employers versus if you were to go into the corporate world and earn 5 or 6 times more than what the government may pay you for doing the same job. So that's the government way of saying thank you for working for one of these employers, and someone has to do the job. So we appreciate you doing this job. So we're only going to make you pay this loan for 10 years instead of 20 years. And at that 10-year mark, we're going to forgive whatever's left. So it may be more that you have to be forgiven for versus if you were in the 20 years, you would have paid down more and they're forgiven less. So it's just basically a kudos for doing them a favor for someone that has to do these jobs anywhere. So the actual plan that you refer back to is whatever income-driven repayment plan you're on, not the program of forgiveness of the loan. Your second question is about the, what was your second question? I'm sorry, I forgot.
No, you're fine. The payment, like if I decided, because you were like talking about if I, you would have to make like 120 payments. So if I decided in 1 month in December, oh, I got a bonus from work or something, so I want to make 2 payments. Does that count as does it count as one payment or does it count as actual 2 payments because I made it in 1 month? Or do they go 2 months?
Yeah, so unfortunately that would only count as one payment because you have to have a payment every month to count as a qualifying payment. So if you make that payment in May and then you make another payment at the end of May and you do not classify it as a June payment, then they do not count that as your June payment and it's no longer a qualifying payment. It's just being an additional payment for the month of May. So you want to be intentional with your payments. If you decide to make more than one payment in a month, just make sure that you're putting it on that next month's payment and it's not being applied to your interest or it's not being applied to your principal. So it's just intentional about those payments if you're going to make more than one in a month. And if you're not intentional about it, then they're basically going to say, well, that's only one payment, so it didn't qualify for 2. I've done that. So yeah, it's only counted as one unless you're intentional about where the payment's supposed to go.
Thank you.
Things to remember about student loans following graduation. This is our last slide, guys. So first one is options are available. Whenever you think you're in a situation where you cannot make your payments, we just talked about 4 income-driven repayments. Those aren't the only ones, but those are the 4 that focus on income. As you've seen when we went to the student aid stimulator and saw those different loan options, those other 4 absolutely will be more. But those are available to you if you're in a situation to handle it that way. But just always remember that there's options available. Don't feel like you're at a loss. And we're going to talk about this one. I just want to add this one on here. Communication is key. Those options that are available to you can be discussed with your loan provider. Even if you're proactive and you do the research and you're not sure about something, you can go to your loan provider and ask them if this is something that you're allowed to do on the particular loans you may have for your student loans. So options are available in communication. They go hand in hand together. The other one is remember to recertify annually. I can list off a number of things that would put you back if you do not recertify annually. We've discussed some of them, but the main thing is, one, it would increase your monthly income that you would have, your monthly expenses that you would have to pay every month if you do not recertify. It disqualifies you for the public service loan forgiveness program because you have to be on one of these IDRs in order to qualify for the public service loan forgiveness. Because if you do not need help to pay down your loans, why would you be on this public service loan forgiveness program? It's available to people that need that assistance. So remember to recertify annually. Plus, you end up paying more than what you've already would have had to pay overall on the life of the loan. So just make sure that you do your due diligence and recertify annually. Your loan provider is supposed to reach out to you, whether it be, so keep your information updated. It may be via email, it may be on their website, and it may be through the physical mail. It all depends on what your communication is supposed to be with them. They will notify you, but just in case they don't notify you, make sure that's something that you remember to do. It's your responsibility, it's your loan. The next thing is final decision. The final decision is yours. So only you know your finances, only you know what type of expenses you have, what kind of income you have, no matter how much advice you may go out for, no matter if you have a financial advisor, they only know what you tell them. So you're the true factor in this. You're the equal sign. You're the only one who knows everything that goes into your finances. So when you're deciding on if a repayment option is for you, if I should defer, if I should go into forbearance, it's kind of up to you to decide if that's the right decision for you, because you're the one that has to live with that decision. So be intentional about that decision. Lastly, we have the SMART goals. SMART goals can go to any layer of your life, but for loans, we're gonna gear it more towards to how it fits in. So the S in SMART stands for specific. Student loans is specific to you. Only you understand your student loans. There are millions of people in the world, to be exact, about 45 is what we discussed 2 weeks ago. There are 45 million people in the world that are carrying student loan debt of some type. No matter how many of those 45 million people that may have a student loan, only one is living your student loan journey. No one student loan journey is exactly the same as the next person's. So be specific about your understanding of your student loans and where you want it to go. The next one is the M, measurable. Student loan payments should be measured based on all incoming income. Be honest with yourself. You might only want to report what you have on your taxes every year when it comes to what's required to be reported on your taxes. If you make more than what's required to be reported on your taxes, it may come in from different arenas, or if you happen to get a bonus, or you come into a financial blessing of some type, like, be honest with what you're able to pay into your student loans, because even if you're on one of those IDR repayment plans, you're still going to be taxed at some point for having that student loan. When they decide to forgive those loans, the amount that you have left, you're going to be taxed on. And that amount that's left over, whether it be $10,000 or $40,000, is going to be added to whatever your annual income was for that particular year. If you're making $50,000, then you have an additional $40,000, $30,000 or $40,000 in student loans that are being forgiven by the government. You now have an annual income of $80,000. That puts you in a way different tax bracket from if you were only making $40,000. So when you're deciding what your student loans payments can be, what you can pay each year, even if it's a little more than what your payments may be, remember that student loans are measurable. And how you decide to focus on it today will make the difference on how you end up having to deal with it in the future. The A is attainable. Student loans you can have attainable student loans when it comes to manageability. It's right in your reach. You make the decision on how you can handle things. Yes, life situations happen, but you can decide based on what's available for you in your student loan repayment options on how to handle those student loans so that you can manage them and they will remain attainable. The R is for relevant. I always recommend individuals that's going through their student loan journey to share your success stories, share your failure stories. Student loan experiences may vary by the individual, but people do need to know they're not doing this by themselves. Like, you're not the only one that has student loans. We have a plethora of million people out there who have student loans, and by sharing your stories, you're showing that your student loan journey is relevant and that your relevancy makes someone else's student story loan relevant as well. The T is for time bound. Time controls all areas of our life, and student loans is no different from that. You may have to pay on it for 10 years, you may have to pay on it for 20 years, but it's a part of your life. the time of your life for those 10 or 20 years that you're responsible for those student loans. So time plays a factor in student loans also. And I believe that is the last one, and it is. So we come to the end. Any questions, anyone? I know you all asked throughout, but is there any more questions?
Yes. So, can you put in the comments, or can you email me the options of consolidation? Because I know that out there, and I know you said it on the last call, that all of this information is free. So unless you just don't want to do it yourself, then contact the student government center to be able to consolidate and different things like that. But what are like some consolidated loans that you would recommend, or maybe yours, so that someone who needs to go into one of these programs, or who would like to go into one of these programs, can consolidate multiple loans into one, especially the older generation who has all of this debt that they're trying to get rid of?
So as long as they're federal student loans, so government student loans, that would be your direct subsidized and unsubsidized, those subsidized and unsubsidized Stanford loans, and also the FFEL loans. As long as it's any of those loans, that includes the graduate and the Parent Plus loan, then I would recommend going to studentaid.gov and doing their consolidation program. It's user friendly and it is free. That's the only one that I know for sure that you will have no unexpected expenses. There are other programs for like the private loan side where you can consolidate your loans, but you might come into contact with a fee in those cases because they feel like they're doing you a favor by allowing you to lump all your private loans into one. So somebody else is taking on the responsibility of what may be a risk on their part. So if they're government loans, you go to studentaid.gov, and you can type in, they have like the little magnifying glass in the top right corner of the website. Type in consolidate loans. It takes you right to that page. All the information you need to know about that is on that page. I will send Miss Davis the PowerPoint for today's discussion, as well as the one we had 2 weeks ago. And maybe she can provide that for you all on one of our social media platforms. I'll also send her the studentaid.gov website. Well, it's actually included in both of our presentations that we have. So if you go back to one of our social media platforms, that information should be available for you. And I'll send those links to her also, just so she can have the links separate.
I have two more questions, sorry.
Okay.
So my first question is, for someone, when you got on your program, was it before or after you consolidated your loans?
Okay, so I actually took the consolidation approach first, just because I ended up having 4 different payments, and that was because the loan provider that the Department of Education originally provided me with was no longer available when I graduated from my university. So they gave me another provider. So I had a loan that was sold to this one particular loan provider. Then I had another loan from the original provider that they gave me. And then when I came on for like my senior and I took out a loan, those 2 providers, I guess, wasn't accepting people anymore. So they gave me another one. So I ended up with like four loan providers, 4 different payments. And one of the loan providers happened to be Sallie Mae. If anybody has Sallie Mae out there, nothing against Sallie Mae. This is not me trying to put any financial institution down. But if you can find a way to consolidate your loan out of Sallie Mae, please do so, because those individuals are there to do a job. They're just doing their job. They have to try to get those payments. That's all they're doing. But they are very, very aggressive. And if you do not want phone calls at 5 and 6 o'clock at night, where you having to make a payment, if you're not in good standings, for you to have to make a payment, and they come off very aggressive, then I would recommend you consolidating so that you can find you a different loan provider. Sallie Mae is very aggressive. Those individuals are just doing their jobs. So this is nothing against them. But I would strongly recommend you find a different loan provider. But anyway, I did the consolidation program first, just to narrow down my payments into one. Once I completed the consolidation program, then I considered what repayment options were available to me. This made it a lot easier to apply for your repayment plan, because the repayment plan requires you to list every single one of your loans that you want to include in this repayment plan. And if you miss just one, then basically that's one loan that you have to still make that additional payment to until it's been approved to be added on to the payments, the loans that you already have been approved for. By consolidating it, you only have to put in that consolidated loan. And they determine, and that consolidated loan already includes all your loans because you've already taken that step once when you chose to consolidate your different loans from all your providers.
Okay, so for someone who might have went into the repayment plan with the multiple loans, it's time to consolidate. Will this affect the current repayment plan? Do you know?
So your current repayment plan, so you say you went into the repayment plan first, aren't you only making one payment at this time, right?
Yes, but it's multiple different loans.
So the multiple different loans are still going to show up in your consolidated side, so you can know, make sure all your loans is included. If you were to pull your credit report, it would list all of those different loans, and you can confirm that they're always all included in your consolidated loan. So in your consolidated loan, you're still going to see it spelled out basically for each loan. The difference is that that consolidated loan amount would narrow down the amount that's paid, and it has only been occurring just at one interest, versus on a repayment plan, your interest is separated out by each individual loan. So that's how that it would differ if you didn't go through the consolidation first. So you're paying 6% on one direct loan, you're paying 4% on an unsubsidized loan. Like, it's just those different percents that you're still paying out on your repayment option. And that's if you don't consolidate first. So the consolidation lumps it into one payment and brings you down to one interest rate. If you go straight into the repayment plan, you have multiple interest rates that's being applied that you're paying interest on separately. So
see, I have multiple interest rates, so I didn't consolidate mine, but I do make one payment. Well,
so
two.
I would recommend, if you're at a stage, so say you're in the public service loan forgiveness program and you've already started down this path, if you were to go and consolidate your loans, you would have to keep paying on that public service loan forgiveness in order for you to have your qualifying months. If you were to stop that process and say, hey, I'm going to consolidate my loans, because when you consolidate the loans, it's being taken from possibly from one financial institution to another. For that time period that it takes to transition, you might not have a payment for 2 or 3 months. So if you're okay with missing out on 2 or 3 months of payment, because basically that consolidation basically snatch away whatever payments you have from your credit report, it makes it seem as though it's paid off, and then it's placed back into the repayment, is back into your credits once the new financial institution takes responsibility for those consolidated loans. So for those 2 or 3 months, you will not have a qualifying payment because you're technically not paying anybody as you're transitioning through this period. So that's a personal choice for you. Are you okay with missing those additional 2 or 3 months while you go through that process? Because the qualifying payments doesn't change just because you've transitioned it from one way to another. Your interest rate is going to be your main factor of change.
Okay. And my second question is, does this affect my credit? So I know that because they're running my credit for a loan consolidation. So if that's the case, then what if I have bad credit because I've messed up with student loans? We know student loans truly affect our credit. So for someone who has unhealthy credit, if they were trying to apply for the student loan, the consolidation, how would this affect them? Would they still be accepted, or do they have to have like a certain credit score?
Okay, so your consolidated loans does have the potential risk to hurt your credit score, and it kind of just depends on what method you may use. So if you're in the repayment plan, it will lower whatever your interest may be, but your credit score over time may be affected by this, because if you go straight into repayment plan, your interest rates may vary. So that means that you're paying different interest, you're accumulating different interest on your loan. Versus on the consolidation loan, you're only paying one interest. So the amount of interest being added to your loan will most likely be less on the consolidated side than if you were to go straight into IBR. So this means that you will be accumulating more interest on your IVR side. And if you only have to pay like $50 a month, that's not enough to cover all your interest in most cases. So that means that your debt every month is increasing. If your debt is increasing, then your credit score is basically showing that you're having more debt come in than you have income available, which is where that debt to income ratio comes in. So your credit score will be affected in the fact that your debt is constantly increasing because you're not paying enough on those student loans to bring it down if it's in a repayment status. On the consolidated side, you have the least amount of risk because that amount of interest that goes into your consolidated amount may only be that 6%, not those variables that come in on the repayment side if you don't consolidate. So that one interest rate is being applied to your loan. Now, you might have an increase in your debt. You might not be paying enough to pay down just the interest amount, but the amount of interest that's being accumulated is less than what you would see on the repayment side. So that's where your credit score would come into play on determining if it would be affected if you consolidated versus if you were to just go straight in on the income-based repayment.
So they don't have like a credit standard for you to apply for the consolidated loan.
Not if it's federal, it's all federal loans. Now, if you're on the private side, everything private related is credit based, no matter what. It's always credit based on the private side. On the federal side, they don't focus on the credit side when you apply for the consolidated loan. Your credit score will only be affected based on how much more interest you're incurring that's being added to your debt every month.
Perfect. Thank you. Oh, and then one more question. Sorry, guys. So you stated my first question that I just asked, that when an individual is doing the repayment plan, they decide to do a consolidation. If they did the consolidation, you don't have a payment within like 3 months. So is that like you don't have a payment within like 2 or 3 months? With that being said, does that affect my credit because they haven't established a payment for me, or am I still, because you're not really paying anyone, so I don't want to miss a payment, like if I did this as a speaking, but how does that affect your credit?
So
I'm making that payment.
Okay, so remember I mentioned that when you are doing a transition of a consolidation loan, it may be going to a different financial institution or loan provider. For some period of time during that consolidation, they're going to pay off the original loan provider or financial institution. And for maybe a month, it might look like you have no student loan debt whatsoever. You know it exists, but the credit world makes it seem as though you've paid off all this debt. And then all of a sudden, a month later or 2 months later, all that debt is just put back on your credit because now the new loan provider or financial institution will show that all this debt has reoccurred. So you will see a fluctuate in your credit score. All of a sudden, you're going to have this jump in your credit score. It's just going to be like, oh my gosh, where did this great score come from? And then a month or two later, it's going to be like, oh my gosh, this score looks so bad. I can't have a good credit score. Then, oh my gosh, it's just so bad. And technically it's not. It's just going to be back into the score that you were around. It should go back to about the same frame you were in prior to it, making it seem as though you paid off your student loans. So it shouldn't go worse unless you just happen to be in a worse financial situation from before you consolidated. But you will see a fluctuate in your score. It'll go up and then it'll come back down.
Okay, I just want to make sure I wouldn't be considered as a non-payer if, I don't make any payments during that time because I actually don't have a place to make a payment to.
So right, you don't owe any money during that 1 month. There's nothing to pay because you have that loan provider you were paying no longer shows you in debt to them. So no, you don't have a payment. The only thing that it'll be affected is that public service loan forgiveness program. You can't make a qualifying payment to no one. So there's no one to pay at that point. So that'll be where your payments will be missed.
All righty, thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions, that's all I have for you all. For anybody that was a part of our call this week, thank you. We really appreciate your support. Please make sure you look at the more social media outlets, Instagram and Facebook and our website, and make sure that you see what our discussion topics would be for the month of August. We're all done, guys.